AI is not new to filmmaking. It's been embedded in the film industry for decades, but we completely misunderstood what it was going to change. In this video, I want to talk about how we got AI backwards, what we thought it would do, what it actually did, and what it's realistically going to change in the film industry. Most people assumed when AI first came around that it was going to change things in more of the administrative roles, any kind of role that you can think of that could be automated. And they thought that the creative industry would probably be the last place that you would find AI. And the irony of it is it was completely backwards. The creative industry is where it went first. The first real case that people started noticing this was with Midjourney, where AI was generating images that looked like they were painted by an artist. And I think that's really where AI took a lot of people by surprise. But if you think about it, it kind of makes sense that AI would go there first. When you're creating something, and in the creative industry, so many times you're pulling from references. You're pulling from things that you see, things that you know. If you're creating a film, in your mind, you're thinking about the films that you've seen in the past, whether it's a conscious or subconscious decision. All of your decisions are influenced by things that came before. There's a quote that I like from the astronomer Carl Sagan that says, "If you wish to make an apple pie from scratch, you must first invent the universe." And I think it's the same with the creative endeavor, that in order to create something completely original, you can't have any references of things that have come before it. But you see it all the time in movies and TV shows. You see a scene or something and it feels like it's paying homage to something that came before it. And the filmmakers will say like, oh, we were very inspired by this movie or this director or this artist, so we wanted to pull some of those references in. So in a way, AI is doing a similar thing to that. And if you think about the tools that AI is going to be able to create, I mean, it's not very different from the things that we already have. For instance, if you're a 3D artist and you're using a render engine, you're relying on an algorithm that is telling you how light is bouncing off of certain surfaces. So if you're using a render engine that's using ray tracing, it's calculating exactly the distance between two different objects, what kind of surface it is, whether it's reflective, whether it's matte, whether it's transparent, see-through, if it's a light source, and it's determining how to bounce off of certain objects. When you think about subsurface scattering, it's an algorithm that's telling you how light passes through skin. Or if you have a simulation software like Houdini, where you can set up a whole water simulation and it will react realistically how water would react in the real world based off of physics. Or if you want to set up a rock structure and have it break apart realistically, it knows the weight and the density, and all of that stuff gets calculated into the program. So if you create two objects and you tell the software what this object is and what this object is and how fast they're going, how dense they are, what their mass is, their weight, and you collide them together, the software is going to calculate what that simulation to do. Or if you need an entire crowd simulation and you want everybody to be cheering because they're in a stadium, or you want them all to be charging on the offense because it's part of a war scene, that software will be able to simulate it for you. If you look back at The Lord of the Rings, some of the software that they developed specifically for that film was crowd simulations, where you could actually give agency to 3D doubles, where when they run at each other, they will make a decision to fight, how to fight, whether they should turn and run. If there's somebody else behind them, they would sense that and they would turn and fight that person.
There's artificial intelligence, which is basically an attempt at emulating the processes of a human mind. In Massive, we try to achieve natural crowd-like behavior, not by controlling a whole crowd, but by creating one agent who will react naturally to his environment. We call them agents because it's a common term in artificial intelligence for a decision-making unit. Then when we put thousands of them together, they will give us an emergent crowd behavior that is also natural, without us having to say how the crowd has to behave.
The only difference is it's being coded by a software engineer versus being trained on like a learning system. And I just want to clarify the difference between AI and what's been there in software before AI is basically AI is machine learning, so it is ingested with a ton of different information and it can make decisions on its own, whereas algorithmic intelligence is something that is programmed and coded from a software engineer. So one is trained on a bunch of data and information outside of the software. The other is a specific code algorithm that has been coded by a software engineer. But the outcome of them is generally pretty much the same. And this type of advancement in technology is not new. If you go back to 1993 and look at Jurassic Park, when they were creating that, the original idea was that they were going to do the dinosaurs with stop motion. But then they started doing tests in the computer and realized, hey, we might actually be able to do these dinosaurs fully computer generated. And a large part of it was done with the animators animating a T-Rex, but the algorithmic intelligence of the software allowed them to figure out how these dinosaurs would look when they're rendered. They were able to give the dinosaurs weight and mass and skin. They started with the the bone structures, and the software allowed them to render out dinosaurs that looked realistic and put them into the scene. And that was one of the early marks of where the industry sort of took a turn into digital technology and left behind the techniques of stop motion animation in favor of computer generated animation. And it didn't mean that everybody that was a stop motion animator was out of a job anymore. In fact, Phil Tippett, who was going to do the stop motion dinosaurs, came on to train the animators doing the digital dinosaurs, the techniques of animation and what they need to understand from it. And if you think about virtually every piece of software, whether it's an editing software or a 3D software or even something like Photoshop, the tools that they have inside of it are getting the artist further than they could have on their own. It's all programmed, it's all coding, it's basically ones and zeros, and you're able to use the software because you're seeing little icons and things that were coded into the software to help you be able to design or create the images that you wanted. If there's one area where AI actually makes sense to me, it's when it's integrated as a tool for creative decision making. And that's why today's sponsor, Audiio, is a really good example of AI being used the right way. Audiio is a music licensing platform with genuinely high quality tracks that works across pretty much everything I do, from commercials, title sequences, pitch videos, short films, you name it. And they have an AI assistant built into the platform that helps you discover music. You can describe the type of music that you need and it'll help you find what you're looking for. And with the link match feature, it'll allow you to paste links from YouTube or Spotify, and it'll help you search the audio library for similar tracks for your project. And the biggest thing for me is the search when you're looking for music. Those kind of tools matter. They have a ton of variety to choose from. So if you're a filmmaker or a creative who needs high quality music without the friction, then check out the link below for 50% off the first year of Audiio Pro, which includes unlimited music, sound effects, stems, and AI search tools. And this is a great example of when AI is used as a tool and not a replacement, it can be incredibly useful. And getting into when we really saw AI making waves in the industry was the introduction of Midjourney. Once that came out and people saw the kind of artwork and the kind of images that you can generate just through giving a text prompt, really changed the game a lot. And rightfully so, a lot of people panicked and became afraid. What does this mean for traditional artists? What does this mean for concept artists? Because everyone thinks, well, now you could just generate any kind of artwork. You could create an original piece of art that looks like it was painted by Ralph McQuarrie. And so now you no longer needed to hire somebody or pay them to create the artwork that you need, and that would somehow put a lot of artists out of business. But one comparison that I heard that was actually pretty compelling was the advent of photography. Before film cameras came around, the only way that you could capture a scene or someone's likeness was through a painter. Somebody would have to come in and physically draw them or physically paint them. Once the photograph came around, you no longer needed somebody that had the skills to do that. And something like that wasn't common. It took somebody with a very high skill set to be able to produce something like that. But now with a photograph, you could get something that looks 100% accurate to the scene or the person that you're trying to capture. But painters never went away. People still value art. They still value hand-drawn, handmade, hand-painted art. And the two of those things can live simultaneously. It just changes the way that things happen. For something that you don't need painted and you just want to capture, you have the tool to do that. Before, you had no option. You could only paint it. You couldn't take a picture of it. And with something like Midjourney, it's not that it's necessarily putting concept artists out of business. What it's doing is it's giving the opportunity to, say, maybe a director that's developing a film who never had the budget or money to hire a concept artist, but now because of this tool, they can generate some kind of images that help them express their idea in a visual manner. And so that person never would have been able to hire an artist before, and without Midjourney, they just wouldn't have created those images at all. But now that they have that tool, they're able to create the images, and it's not that they're putting anybody out of work because they wouldn't have been able to hire anybody anyways. And now getting into the area where people think AI is headed, that AI is going to generate entire movies, entire images, TV shows from start to finish. Like the AI is going to create the final product. And I don't think that that's the case at all. Pixar isn't going to be overtaken by some AI engine that comes in and generates entire animated feature films that people prefer to watch over Pixar. It's not even going to be about final image creation. What we're seeing right now with AI is that companies are using it to actually create final images, final shots in movies, or even entire commercials that we've seen today. But I don't think that that's what's going to happen. It's not that AI is going to generate the final image. It's that AI is going to create the final image the same way that artists will. So AI isn't going to replace Pixar's RenderMan software. It's going to operate that software the same way that an artist would. Where I do think things are going to change when it comes to post-production and visual effects and animation is when it is more common to have artificial intelligent agents.
This is a new thing that we just did, but the idea that an AI can not just answer questions for you, but it can go actually do stuff on your behalf as your agent. It can go do research for you. It can go book something for you. It can go buy something for you. It can go change some things in the world for you and think more and use tools. I think most people think of ChatGPT as this app that you can ask anything, but it'll become this thing that can do anything. And that'll change how you use computers. It'll change how you do things in your life.
Now, an AI agent is basically like a virtual or digital assistant where on the basic level, you could tell them to go order you something off of Amazon or schedule an appointment at somewhere to take your car in or whatever. And then this agent, instead of just giving you information or ideas, will actually go and act on your behalf.
It was one of those moments where I could tell that, oh man, doing this the old fashioned way is going to feel like the Stone Age so quickly. I'm going to try to tell people someday, do you remember when if we wanted to do something, we actually had to go click around the internet and look for a table. Yeah. And then if we wanted to move it, we had to call the restaurant. And that's going to be unimaginable because of course you just tell your AI to do those things for you.
I think that is what will change the post-production animation and visual effects industry. So instead of a director giving instructions to a 3D modeler to say, hey, we need to model this prop in 3D, we need this many polygons, whatever. Instead, it will give a prompt to an AI agent to go create those 3D models or textures or whatever. And then instead of an artist going inside of ZBrush or Maya to model that 3D object, the AI agent will go inside of ZBrush or Maya and create that 3D object. And then the same way that a director might give feedback to the artist and say it needs to be a little bit more like this, a little bit more like that, can you adjust this or that? Then the AI agent will be able to go back and make those modifications or changes to that model. So you can see how this would be implemented into the animation industry, the visual effects industry, or at a company like Pixar, where it's not going to replace the entire company and have things completely generated in AI, but it might thin out the production pipeline a little bit so that you have AI agents that are working on behalf of the directors and the animation supervisors. Because if you're going to create something, you have a separate artist for almost every piece of this. So before you're going to create something, you're going to do an illustration or a piece of concept art, a modeler or a sculptor, a rigger, a lighter, texture artist, somebody for lighting and rendering. And all those pieces get separated among a lot of different artists. And so now you might be able to have AI agents that can take and handle some of that stuff. You might be able to have an AI agent go into ZBrush and create a model and then take it into Maya and rig it up for animation and then go into another software program and be able to create the textures and lighting and all that kind of stuff. And that's much more of a realistic way that AI will be implemented into the film industry. Where the problem is that because AI is generative, meaning you give it a prompt and it generates an entire image, if you need to change one little detail about something, you can't do that because it's going to regenerate the entire image. Versus the way that things are right now, especially with visual effects, you create every single little bit of detail. So if you need to go in and just add a piece of dust on somebody's shoulder, you can go into the texture map and just paint that little piece in there, or you could model a little speck and put it on their shoulder. But if you try to tell AI to do that, it's going to have to recalculate the whole image. And not only is it going to change the speck of dust on the shoulder, but it's going to change things in the background or the face or the clothes or whatever. And it's not going to be exactly the same. So you don't have that same level of precision and detail that you do when you create things in the current way that we create visual effects or movies. A director can make the tiniest little changes that they want, just shifting things here and there. Don't change anything else except this one little thing, and AI can't do that. And I was surprised to hear James Cameron say this exact same sentiment recently in an interview for Avatar: Fire and Ash when he was asked about artificial intelligence and how it might change the industry.
I can't get in and make the kind of microscopic adjustments that I want to make. Each time it's creating something new, completely new. And I lose that ability to iterate.
You are going to be able to create a lot of things that will be implemented into shots. I don't doubt that even right now, there's already visual effects studios that are using AI to generate backgrounds or take matte paintings and turn those into moving camera motions. And in some instances, even creating an entire shot, but maybe it's a tiny little piece of it. It's not an entire scene and definitely not the whole film. So image-based AI generation will be used in some kind of capacity, but not as the finished product. It will be just a piece of the pie. The biggest advantage in visual effects right now is the iteration process and being able to make changes and tweaks and not have to adjust the entire image, which AI just won't be able to do until we're using AI agents, where instead of telling the artist to go add a spec, we're telling the AI agent to go add a spec and they will be able to do that. Not regenerating the whole image, but actually going into the software and doing the thing that we wanted it to do. So all this said, really at the end of the day, it's going to be used just as a tool as every other piece of software and digital technology has been used as a tool. You see it already with the way that Adobe has integrated it into Photoshop or Premiere. Like in Photoshop, instead of having to go in and painstakingly hand paint something out of a background, you could just select the area, say generative fill, and it will remove that object from the scene. We'll be able to have that in compositing software. In Premiere, you can just drag out a clip where there was no footage, and now it will generate an extension of that clip using artificial intelligence. And so those are the kinds of things that I think AI is going to do. It's going to be a tool the same way digital technology, the same way when we came up with render engines, the same way when we came up with 3D animation and moved away from stop motion animation. The same way the industry moved from shooting things on film cameras to shooting things on digital cameras. And probably the biggest example of this is when the internet came out. That's probably the biggest change that we've had in technology, and we can see where that has changed things and how it's progressed things. In the film industry specifically, it sort of took a while for any of this to change anything, and we saw that digital technology was on the rise right before this, and all of a sudden we had digital projectors in movie theaters instead of film projectors, which allowed the films to be delivered on a digital format instead of actual giant film reels that would have to be hand delivered. Now you could just give them a hard drive with a digital file on it. Now that we have the internet, there is no physical delivery that has to happen. It can just get sent over the internet online. The theaters get a DCP of the file that they're going to project in the theater. But where the biggest change happened was in film distribution. You had videos playing online on YouTube, but nobody really took it seriously as though it would be something that you could actually watch real movies on. And that's when Netflix came in and changed the game and said that you could actually just stream your TV shows and movies straight from your TV. Once that happened, that is when physical media started going on the decline. We had to say goodbye to Blockbuster, and now everything is being streamed online. And now you have every major studio trying to create their own streaming service. And that is probably the biggest change that we've seen in the film industry based on technology. So much so that it's made us rethink what the role of movie theaters are going to play in the future of cinema. And AI is already being used to help writers, editors, visual effects, development. I've even seen a Boston Dynamics type of robot operating a camera on set. But again, it goes back to what people think of when they think of AI, because a robot operating a camera is no different than motion control camera systems, which we've had around since Star Wars. So technically, when we're talking about AI, we're really talking about machine learning. And the tools and the things that it creates is not much different from the standard way that we've done things before. So whether something was created using AI or a standard traditional method, I don't think that's really going to matter, because people didn't freak out when we went from analog animation to digital animation. The thing that people don't like is when that digital animation is overused. Likewise, audiences aren't going to respond well if they can tell that something has been made using AI or generated using AI. And the images that are generated by AI, people already aren't going to want to watch that. Like if something they know is fully created by AI and it doesn't have a human voice, it doesn't have artists that are involved, people aren't going to want to watch it. I saw recently these people that went to a super fancy restaurant, and as the waiter was bringing out the food, they were explaining where all these things came from. The cheese came from France, and the butter came from this place and that place, and everything had a story of where the food came from, where the ingredients came from, and it made a story to the food that they were eating. And it was expensive because it had value to it, because it had a story to it. And it's the same way with film, with any kind of art. Like, people are interested in the endeavor. If you tell somebody that this piece of art was created in 5 minutes by just slapping paint onto a canvas, it doesn't really have any meaning or value to it. But if you tell people that this painting was created over the course of 16 years, as was the Mona Lisa, then a lot more people are going to be interested in it. So AI isn't going to change the film industry because it's intelligent. It's going to change the film industry because it's efficient. And industries always change when tools are introduced to make things more efficient. Anyways, those are my initial thoughts on AI and how it's going to affect or change the film industry. I'm sure that I'll make some more that are related to this topic, because there's so many different things that I could dive into and talk about specifically in every scenario, from production to post-production to development, screenwriting, and these are just some of my initial thoughts. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks a lot for sticking around, and I hope this was some useful information. Let me know in the comments what you guys think, or if there's anything you want me to expand on or talk about, be happy to do so. But until next time, later.